Hello, Macey here. A warrant has been issued for the arrest of one of the colonists down on Halcyon One, who has been officially accused of being the Hanland spy, but unfortunately he's gone missing and is somewhere in the desert. A search party has been sent out to try and find him. Meanwhile, the Spirit of Kerbin has picked up a transmission from Red 2, who has detected scrambled comms chatter in the vicinity of Vall. Of course, this is what we feared the most. I'm going to keep my speed fast on this hyperbolic orbit for now so we don't get caught out. And there it is, visual contact. He's going to reduce his profile as best he can here, but if we can see them, they can probably see us. I have no doubt this is Hanland up to its old tricks again. There has been several sightings of ships leaving Kerbin, so this is possibly where they've been coming. But so far we only have one contact here. One thing is certain, this definitely adds credibility to the paranoia and fear back on the colony. Someone has been communicating with whatever this is. But now let's take a closer look. And it's a station. Well, that's the last thing I expected to see out here, and extremely worrying. But if there was comms chatter in the area, what was it chatting to? Whatever's out there, I'm going to hope it's also on a prograde orbit, because we are on a hyperbolic retrograde orbit at the moment, so nothing has any chance in hell of intercepting me or catching me. But I really would like to get eyes on whatever else is out here, so we know what we're dealing with. But it doesn't look good so far. We don't really have anything that can take out a station, and we have another visual contact. Multiple visual contacts. The heat pattern looks like these are ships, and Red 2 is hailing on all frequencies, but there is no response. These must be enemy ships. He's certainly not going to hang around, and while we're processing this information, going to leave Vall immediately. Now this veil of secrecy has been lifted. We don't want to be drawn into an engagement with such a light fighter and without the support of the rest of the fleet. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a full complement of shades, but let's learn a little bit more about what we're up against. Spiritwolf are in so much trouble. This is a battle fleet. Multiple cruisers detected. Red 2 has relayed his findings back to the Spirit of Kerbin, which is news not well received. But if things couldn't get worse, we have just lost an Isprit. The accused colonist has returned from the desert and, due to a heinous security breach, stolen an Isprit. But all Isprits have transponder beacons installed in them, and we can see it from orbit here, about 25 kilometers down the coast. The Spirit of Kerbin is also receiving no return ping from Owl's locator beacon, and all comms are dead. But Aldson's party, the geologists, have heard an explosion over the crest of the hill, and with some discussion have decided to go and check it out. The accused apparently turned back up at Halcyon One, trying to frame Gregford for being the Hanland spy, which is clearly motivated by the fact that Gregford had some sort of evidence against him, but now no one knows where Gregford is. Aldson has found a very badly beaten up Al out here in the desert, and blast damage to the area would suggest that the Isprit discharged both its missiles here. There also appears to be rather grisly evidence of Kerbal remains in the sand, which sadly could make at least part of the accused story true. Gregford was here. So amongst this crisis, we now have to deal with a possible murder down on the colony, which is not good at all. But we need to leave that investigation for those on the ground. Up here, we need to figure out what we're going to do about this. Intelligence leaks mean Hanland think Spiritwolf's battlecruiser is out of action. That much is almost certain. but that possible oversight could steal us a much needed advantage. It has become an imperative. Get the Vanguard into fighting shape before the Vall to Lathe transfer window, for it is our only hope of victory. If we fail, then we are surely doomed, and all we have achieved here will be for nothing. Now they know that their obvious invasion plans have been unveiled. They will not wait any longer. They will attack. I've been trying to work out if the Spirit of Kerbin has enough remaining fuel to be able to change its orbit and rescue the Vanguard from its position and then get back to this orbit. And I do have quite a bit of fuel left, but the problem is I don't have the right size docking ports. Every ship in the fleet has completely incompatible docking ports, unfortunately, but there is a way around it. I want to use this xenon gas store here on the back of the Spirit of Kerbin as an adapter, because there's a big port on one side and a small port on the other, which is perfect, but we still have to get onto this orbit, which is going to take quite a lot of fuel, but I think we can just about pull it off. So first of all, I've just pushed out the orbit so it crosses the orbit of the Vanguard, and then I've made an inclination change at that point, which should level us up. So here we go. Let's get the Spirit of Kerbin over to the Vanguard. If you remember, there is already a escort Isprit on the Vanguard's orbit, which I deployed there upon arrival, and I'm going to use that to do the refueling between the two ships, because the mosquitoes cannot carry enough fuel for the job. So now I've more or less matched the orbit of the Vanguard, I now need to rendezvous. So this is done in the normal way, even though this is a big ship. I tend to get the last final adjustments using RCS at the end rather than turning the ship around. So that's a good rendezvous there, and now I've turned up. I just need to kill all that speed and try and park as best I can next to this ship so I don't drift away too much. I don't want them too close, because then the lag just becomes unmanageable, as you can know. And this is a good distance. I can ferry between those then. So now I need to get this escort Isprit into position and install the adapter onto the front of it so it can then tow the fuel over to the Vanguard and we can begin this operation. But it's going to be very complicated. It's going to require a lot of messing around. So let's just get on with it and hope that it works. So I need to park this next to the Spirit of Kerbin. When I say park, I mean our relative speeds to each other are 0, so we're not drifting. And now we're going to use our old friend Ed here to tow stuff about for us. These now much more reliable ED series Astro droids are invaluable for this sort of work, but I am slightly concerned that it's going to be a bit heavy, this payload, and it can be hard maneuvering things with such a light droid. But let's detach this and see how we do. Now I just need to tug this out and connect it to the waiting Isprit, which is just parked outside there. You can see it hanging there. I always find these moments rather serene as we're exiting the hangar, but I'm struggling to maneuver this, so I've decided to just drop it here, and then I'll get the Isprit to maneuver around and pick it up itself. So just docking the Isprit with it. Now I'll get rid of Ed and send him back to his berthing for now. His job's over. As time has gone on, the crew of the Spirit of Kerbin have come to accept Ed as one of their number. So just putting him back here in his berthing, and let's get back to business. So here we have the adapter installed on the Isprit. Now I just have to fix that to the Vanguard and we can start this operation. So this is the side port, the only port that this has, a small port, which is the problem we're having at the moment, but that's now attached, and the first lot of fuel I'm sending over here. The Isprit was completely full of fuel because it hasn't used any. I deployed it with full fuel. So that's the first trip complete. I've emptied the Isprit of fuel and propellant, except for a tiny little bit to get back to the Spirit of Kerbin. I've left the adapter attached because there's no point dragging it around, and now I can dock to the big port on the Spirit of Kerbin on top of the bridge and get another load of fuel and another load of propellant, and carry that back over. And I think 2 runs should be enough, because the last thing I want to do is leave the Spirit of Kerbin with not enough fuel or propellant. Being the flagship, the centre of operations of the Spiritwolf fleet out here in Lave, I think it should have most of the fuel. So all I want to do is to get just enough on board to make it combat effective, which is also going to need a lot of RCS to power the anti-fighter missile system that's on board. The Isprit is actually proving to be very effective for this sort of operation, because it's actually very manoeuvrable and is one of the easiest ships I've ever flown for docking, because it's very stable and the RCS is quite centralized. So here I am docking for the final time, but this time it's a little bit unstable, so I'm slightly worried this is going to break apart. I don't know why it's done this time, so I'm just going to get this fuel over as quick as I can into any place that I can, and then undock like I've just done there. And I'm going to take the adapter back with me now to put it back on the Spirit of Kerbin, because we do need all that xenon gas to refuel the mosquitoes. And you can see here that we are actually drifting apart. These 2 ships are drifting apart because it's very hard to keep them together, because Lathe is quite a small moon, comparatively speaking, and keeping things together in orbit can be a bit tough, because if they're slightly above or below each other, even by a fraction of amount, as the orbit goes round, they will drift apart. It's something I can't really solve. So now I've got it back, I'm going to use a mosquito this time, because Ed is just too unstable to do this effectively, and it's a bit wobbly and I can't be bothered with it. So I'm going to use a mosquito, and Red Leader is out here going to go off and dock with the Isprit and pick up its payload. Just turning on the mosquito's floodlights. All the new mosquitoes are equipped with floodlights. It gets quite dark out here on the rim, so now I'm going to dock with this Isprit and take this adapter off it and try and get it back to the Spirit of Kerbin. So here I have it. I'm going to turn around. It's a little bit easier to maneuver with these mosquitoes because they have a much better gyro on board. The gyros on the probes are very poor, which makes it quite hard. So here I am into the maw of the beast. Let's flick those lights off because we don't really need them in here. Subdued, mellow lighting of the hangar. So that's on now, and I've just detached, and I'll put this back in the berthing and get the pilot back on board, having completed his duty. He did enjoy a little bit of time out of the ship, if only for a few moments. So there we have it. Now I have to refuel this Isprit because obviously it has nothing left in it, having just refueled. So I'm docking again to the large port on top of the bridge, and I'm just going to fill it full of fuel. Okay, so far this mission has been a resounding success. We have the Vanguard back up to fighting shape, and everything is refueled. We've got the adapter back onto the Spirit of Kerbin, so everything is good. It's looking up at last. Let's take a look at where Red 2 is now. He's still on his way out, which is a problem because his chances are ever diminishing that he's going to make it back to Lathe in time for the Hanland invasion. Back on Halcyon One, Cpt.Chadbrett has arranged a meeting with all the surviving colonists that are present and correct, and are trying to decide what they're going to do in light of recent events. And it's of general consensus that they should move the colony. Its exact position has most likely been compromised, and for fear of ground assault they want somewhere far more defensible. Meanwhile, Aldson has managed to get Al back online, but there is a black spot in his sensor logs. Also, all comm records from the last cycle have been erased. Cpt.Chadbrett has ordered Al to go and check out the Isprit's transponder beacon and see if we can get some more answers to this riddle, which is over 15 kilometers away, so quite a journey. Aldson found within Al's carapace a crude explosive device, but it must have misfired in the blast, luckily with little effect, which saved Al's life. And now Aldson is rejoining his party, ready to be picked up by Halcyon One when they've worked out where they're going to go. Back to the fleet. This is the Vanguard's maneuver node, trying to get back onto an ecliptic orbit, which is going to be our 200-kilometer rendezvous. And I'm just redistributing this fuel around now, so I've managed to get one tank full of fuel in each of these engines, which should be enough. I've also got a little bit left over in the main tank, so I'm hoping this is enough. And just moving into position now, and let's fire it up. And that is so good to see. That is so good to see. We have her running again. I thought just for a moment, one or two times, that it may never happen and we may have lost that ship altogether, but she's back in fighting shape. I've just completed the inclination change, and now I need to circularize this orbit into the 200-kilometer fleet rendezvous. Despite the horrific circumstances unfolding down on the ground, the situation here in orbit has just drastically improved with the reintroduction of our main battle cruiser, and when Hanland turn up, hopefully they will get a nasty surprise. The last part of this maneuver, I'm down to 2 engines due to the way that I'm piping fuel predominantly from the centre out, so I'm always going to have the last bit of fuel remaining in the outer engines, but I have more than enough fuel for combat manoeuvres, and compared to interplanetary travel, you don't actually need much fuel to engage in a fight as long as you're in roughly the same sort of orbital planes. So this is what I've got left, just a little dribble in these 2 outer tanks, but that's more than enough for our needs. So here it is. Now I want to get the rest of the fleet to rendezvous, not just in that orbit, but in that position, so we can form up as a proper defence fleet, so when Hanland show up, we're in formation and in force. So this is the Isprit I left on this orbit, full of fuel, and I'm going to park this as close as I can to the Vanguard and therefore eliminate drift. And there it is. Looks quite sinister, doesn't it? Silhouetted against the sky. And now to get the Spirit of Kerbal into the same position. And I'm going to do this at the same time as the remaining Isprit and get that into position so we can turn up pretty much at the same time in the same orbit. So imitating exactly the maneuver the Vanguard just did, I've got them to meet at the same point in the orbit. So they're just turning up to the fleet rendezvous at the same time, and you can see the ships here, and there's the Spirit of Kerbal down there. So this is going to be a bit laggy, as you can imagine, but I really do want them close so they don't drift apart. So this is the Spirit of Kerbal trying to get into a parked position. I'm going to use the Vanguard as a point of reference so I can get all of the ships in the fleet to park next to it with relative speeds of 0. And this is the Spirit of Kerbal. I'm just using RCS now to complete this maneuver and kill all of that drift. So now time to get the Isprit and join the formation. This is actually the first time I've formed the whole fleet up in one place, and it's looking quite formidable. Assuming Red 2 doesn't make it back in time, we still have 2 heavy fighters, 1 light fighter, 1 fully armed and operational battle cruiser, and 1 carrier. I'm feeling more confident about this now, but Hanland still clearly have us outgunned. Their shades are more than a match for our fighters, plus 3 cruisers. We're in a lot of trouble because, bear in mind, the Spirit of Kerbal has no defensive capabilities of her own, but she's a tough old bird and can soak up quite a bit of damage, so Hanland, come and get it. I do hope that Red 2 can make it back in time to join the engagement, but if Hanland are going to take advantage of the next transfer window, he will miss the fight, unfortunately. But here he is at last at Apoaps, and I'm just going to pull in that orbit and find lave capture, and there it is, and just make that a little bit more practical, and there we go. There's our new home, a tiny blue speck in the black. It's funny actually, Lathe and all its troubles look so small and insignificant from out here. While on the ground, the mood is of funereal solemnity as people come to terms with the loss of Gregford, a charismatic and heroic young Kerbal, much loved by all. This is Al, still on his mammoth expedition to find the missing Isprit. Back at Halcyon One, everyone is on board and stowed and strapped in, ready for the relocation, and Jenler, being first off, is also last back on board and checking everything is present and correct, and it's time to begin the liftoff procedure. It's quite hard moving this. I am a bit worried about it because I can't use the parachutes even though I've restowed them because I have no action group that can deploy them at the same time. So I'm going to have to do this manually, but we'll see how we'll get on. It can be hard with jet engines trying to land, but okay, liftoff has gone without hitch. I just need to go and pick up the geologists, which are a couple of kilometres down the coast here. It's too much of a long walk to get back, so we're going to go and pick them up. I'm just going to come down ever so gently and try and touch down. The colonists have decided on a small island just off the coast, which should be defensible enough from any ground invasion, unless they brought boats. So here's a touchdown, and there it is. Good enough. Everything's still intact. So let's get the geologists on board. The colonists have been voting and have now decided what to call this new island they will now be inhabiting, and they've come up with something very fitting. They've heard the Vanguard is operational again, which has alleviated some fears, but nobody knows what's going to happen over the next few days, and people are very afraid. Could this mean the end of the colony, or even the end of Spiritwolf as we know it? Could all fall to ruin?